Welcome. Today we are going to be doing NewLook skirt 6843, and I will be doing view E, and it will use pieces 3, 6, and 7. And the width of fabric for the layouts are 44-45 or 58-60. My fabric is 60 inches wide, so I will be using the 60-inch wide pattern layout. So the pattern pieces 6 and 7 I've already trimmed out. I've used the pattern previously, so it's all cut perfectly. Right there is center fold. We are going to make sure that that piece 6 is laying right on the fold of our fabric. The line should match exactly along that fold, and it's best to pin it similar to a grain line, where you're going to go to one end of the pattern piece, pin it, come all the way to the other end, and put a pin in there. No need to pin in between those because you will not be cutting along that fold, so we just need it to be held right in place there. Going over to piece 7, the skirt back, I'm going to put a pin at one end of the grain line, measure it to the selvage, basically taking the measurement that is there. And whatever that measurement is, I need to make sure it matches on the other side. And you can just lay your ruler along, putting it right on the selvage, and then pivoting your pattern piece so it gets to the exact measurement as the first pin. That now has put both pieces on grain. The third piece that we have is piece number 3. It is the waistband, and it shows on the pattern layout that it extends beyond the fabric itself. So you do not want to cut this till later. Illustrate this by using a star, and if you reference up into your pattern glossary or index, you will find a nice picture that shows a star, which is number 12. We go to number 12, and it says you cut out all the pieces of the skirt, and then you cut out the starred piece after, because we are going to need to unfold that fabric. All right, let me quickly pin everything on here. And I'm going to go ahead and begin my cutout, making sure I use nice long smooth cutting strokes with a good sharp pair of scissors, making sure my notches are always cut in the outward direction. It just makes it much easier for any other alterations. When you get to the dart here, there are multiple lines. Make sure you're tracking the correct size. This size, I believe I cut this down to an 8, so I'm going to follow the points and make sure I get up to the correct point at the top. Go ahead and cut the rest of my skirt out here, again using long smooth strokes. The bottom of the pattern piece tells me exactly what my hem allowance will be, which is 1.5 inches is allowed for the hem. Obviously we could make changes if we need to, but that is what the pattern is designed to do. Typically I do that unless there is some need for something else. All right, cut out the back pieces, put those aside. And now I just need to cut out this waistband, and the fabric has some odd long pieces left over, so I'm just going to chop those off to get that weight. This is a polyester blend. It's kind of quite heavy, and my table is slick, so it likes to slide right off. I'm going to unfold this pattern piece, keeping the outside still on the up, so I know that all my pattern pieces are in the same orientation on the fabric. And then this is a crosswise grain. So even though my grain line is going opposite of the selvage, I'm going to be measuring more from the edge up there and making sure that is running parallel. It's such a short little line on top that you can kind of eyeball that, you know, in something straight or not. Again, that fabric was quite weighty, so I went ahead and cut off the end of it so it wasn't sliding off my table. So you're going to go ahead and continue pinning this piece on. I kind of alternate from one side to the other. And it does get a little lumpy, but do your best on that. And then I actually would recommend not cutting out the waistband until the very end, after you're almost constructed most of the skirt and you need the piece. What I found is the skirt for me was just a hair tight, so I let it out a little bit, and because this fabric has literally no stretch in it, it didn't allow me to add a little extra length to it since I was letting it out, and that would have been really helpful, and you'll see at the end why I mean. All right, there are 2 little dots here on this pattern piece. Put a pin through those dots, use your chalk, and I like to mark on both sides because I'm going to be putting interfacing on one of the sides, so I need to make sure I have a dot that I can see come construction time. There are 2 of these dots. One is on the other end, and they are representing where the side seams are in relation to where the waistband is going to be placed. So we'll get those all marked up. Keep 1 pin attached to the pattern piece and the fabric. It just makes things not fall apart. All right, this pattern piece says to cut 1 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. So that is what I'm going to do now. Go ahead and lay out your interfacing. I take the long edge and just laying it right along one of the long edges of the interfacing if you can. And no need to do any markings on that one or notches. All right, now we're moving on to marking the darts. Multiple methods I'm going to show here. The first one is taking your tracing paper, folding it in half so that the chalk or wax color is on the outside of each. Slide it between your 2 layers of the skirt. Using your ruler, make sure you use a ruler and don't try to just kind of freehand this. It gets a little wonky. Find the dart lines that you're following. Use your wheel and apply some pretty good pressure and run along there. That wheel has little perforated spikes on it, and I find it tears up the patterns pretty bad, so up to you if you want to use that method or not. Yes, it's quick, but I find the chalky paper gets all over my fabric, and I prefer to use like the wax paper, but I do not have any at home right now, so I'm going to do the method I tend to always do because I always have chunks of chalk. I'm going to take my ruler, lay it along one of the dart legs. One of those lines is considered the leg. Fold open the pattern piece and the fabric, so I've unpinned kind of everywhere else down at the hem and so forth, so I can flop that fabric over. But you have to make sure you're really holding that ruler, and you can see my right hand there has kept pressure on it the whole time. You take your chalk piece and you run it along the ruler and the fabric at the same time, and you'll end up marking on both. Now this is a chalking pencil. Very few of these I find ever work, but this happened to be one that works pretty well. So by pushing against the ruler and down on the fabric straight down, I get to mark both edges of the or both sides of the fabric at one time. Makes it fairly quick. Probably not as quick as the tracing paper, but it works. Again, hold that ruler really tight, kind of gently flop over the fabric and the pattern piece neatly, and get a good marking on there for both sides so you can see it. I felt like my line could have been a tad bit off, so I went ahead and took a pin and did another method that I'll be showing you on the next piece, and just put it at the tip of the dart, and then I'm going to fold that open using the chunk of chalk. I kind of rub right across the pin on both pieces of fabric, and that I can then confirm that my points are at the right point of the chalk line of the legs, and one of them seemed to be just a tad off, so I went ahead and just extended that just a hair, just to make sure I got that the right length. And this is the skirt front, so there's always mild darts in the skirt front that help us with any fullness we may have in our stomach area. All right, the next method is I'm going to again leave just 1 or 2 pins holding my pattern piece, and then I'm going to pin right through the round dots, where often you can use tailor tacks to do this also. We learned those at the very beginning of the semester. Can reference back to one of your samples. But that would be another way to mark besides doing the chalk. This one works pretty easy. I did this for majority of my life. Once they're all marked, go ahead and remove the tissue, open it up, take your ruler, and then just connect those points basically. You can take your ruler and block of chalk or the chalking pencil. Again, I like that pencil right now. I just sharpened it so the chalk is nice and loose. I tend to feel like they get glossed over and they don't mark as well. Same with the chunks, so occasionally I kind of shave a little bit away or sharpen the pencil, which I did there. So go ahead and continue this on both darts that go in the back. There are 2 darts on each piece, so you have a total of 4 darts in your back of your skirt. Like so. And there you go. You have both pieces now marked with your darts, all on the wrong side of the fabric.